Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining today. How the pandemic is changing the way retailers are thinking about AI with Rogayeh Tabrizi, CEO and founder of Theory+Practice. As a reminder, if you have any questions throughout the conversation, to please submit them using the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen. Here's your host, Deborah Weinswig, CEO and founder of Coresight Research.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm very honored to be here with Rogayeh Tabrizi, CEO of data science firm Theory+Practice. We're going to be discussing how the pandemic is changing the way retailers think about AI. I've always admired Rogayeh as she has a drive to find the answers to complex questions. She is CEO of data science firm Theory+Practice, which specializes in bringing advanced AI solutions to the retail and financial services industries. Theory+Practice uses insights from behavioral economics and tools from advanced analytics. She has been helping retailers not only get more value from their existing data, but she also works to help them navigate the rapidly changing landscape of AI solutions. Rogayeh has a PhD in economics and a master's in experimental particle physics. She is also the recipient of the 2020 Women of Influence Ones to Watch Awards. Thank you for joining me today, Rogayeh.
Thank you so much for having me, Deborah.
So we're going to start with a simple question, but one that is really quite complex. Should retailers even be considering AI given the dramatic change to consumer behavior, changing market conditions, and supply chain disruptions?
I love that question. And believe it or not, I get that question almost twice a week these days. Somebody actually asked me, very struggling with, some of the most basic things. Should we even consider these things? Like you're talking about even behavioral economics, like aren't that just too sophisticated? And the answer is, it's a yes and a no, right? Should retailers consider AI? Let's actually take a step back. Let's really ask ourselves, where are we right now? So if you know where you want to go, so then let's make that assumption that you have a strategy and you know really where you want to go. But in order to be able to get there, you really need to understand where you're at right now, right here. What is the kind of data, what is kind of information and insights that can actually support your strategic path? When you start thinking about your strategy and the kind of work that can really help complement that and just like accelerate that work, because it really at this point is about acceleration, then you have a better place to start from. So what I mean by that, you can think about some of the problems right now, especially during pandemic that we are dealing with. There is a lot of data that we had from before pandemic. Is that actually going to be useful right now in order to train some of the models that we want? We know customers' behaviors has changed. But what kind of changes really are we talking about? And which one of those changes is actually going to influence the work that we want to do right now better? Right? So it's really about understanding what is going to save us more cost, what is going to enhance customer experience even that much better. How can we truly combine efficiency and effectiveness? And I'm using these two words kind of intentionally here. It's about the and it's not really the or between these things.
Well, that whole and right now, I think, kind of really flows into my next question with, physical stores closing, which is quite unfortunate and a result of the current environment. Can retailers use their offline, right, their physical store data to build AI models for their online or their e-commerce customers, right? What's the relationship and how that's a question I get every day, at least 3 times a day.
Yeah, no, and that's such an important question. So with store data, really what we mostly capture is point of sale, right? So POS data, we have transaction data and product data. That's really what we got. We don't, unfortunately, through customer. There are organizations and companies that do this well, but a lot of organizations, at point of sale, you may get some customer information, but not a lot. So you don't really capture behavior, but what is the final thing that happens? What they actually purchased. And that is quite an important piece of information. So to me, there's a real opportunity, especially with e-commerce, to marry that offline information that you had with the e-commerce information you have. Again, organizations have been doing this. The extent of how well it's been done, it's kind of a question mark sometimes. Some organizations do it better than others. I have come across groups that their e-commerce data is really a dark universe, as in it doesn't really connect to their customer data and it doesn't quite connect to the POS. And let me be a little bit more specific what I mean by that. When I'm talking about e-commerce data, a lot of organizations capture data through Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics. So you actually do observe customers' behavior. You know what they typed, what they searched for, what they clicked on, how much time they spend on each one of those different clicks. So you observe all of that. But does that information actually maps back to your known customer universe, people that you have in your CRM data and you had connected it to your transaction and store data? The odds are not really, and it's not done that well or that properly. That is a real opportunity. You know, if you ask me where potentially to start from, I would highly encourage organizations to consider how they can actually marry their e-commerce data to their known universe of customers, so that then they can start observing the behaviors better online. And frankly, they have so much more room to experiment, so much more room to actually play around with things. But the point of it is that you need to know, again, where to start from. Starting place can be, it can be a good thing to just, you know, start with connecting these different data sets together.
And then going back to, right, the customer's path to purchase in the physical world is, you know, kind of a different one that it is from an e-commerce perspective. What do retailers and brands need to consider? What do they need to consider when they're, you know, kind of building these models? Because, you know, as we're seeing kind of, you know, more direct, and, you know, the feeling is that will accelerate, right? As everyone's building their kind of models once again for 21, they have so many questions, right? It's, you know, I think it can be overwhelming. What's your advice? And how should, you know, and how should they think about it as they're, you know, kind of looking towards the
Sorry, I think there's a little bit of a gap, so it's just, you're welcome to Zoom, but really it's about simplification. 2 weeks ago, I had a call with chief product officer at a major retailer, imagine Fortune 10. And when we were talking about this, and we were talking about really the evolution of their online platforms, their mobile applications, their web experience, all of that, we were laughing because we were just talking about, like, is it really necessary for every session for 20 different recommendation systems to fire at once? Is it really necessary? Are you really going to nudge your customers like that? The odds are, well, here it is. I'm searching something. I'm literally typing my intention. I'm telling you exactly what is it that I'm after. So what would be the next obvious stuff? You know, I'm using that word a little bit again intentionally here. Well, show me the product that I'm asking for with the correct price associated to it. Maybe don't show me out of stock options. Right? We're talking about enhancing experience, and I think we are truly making the world that much, or the problem that much more complicated than it is. I think the real differentiator here would be how we can actually simplify and go back to the essence, to what end of things. What are we really wanting to do? We want to enhance our customers' experience. We want to show them products that can actually influence their life. Well, higher quality products. There are things that we know works, right? And it's really about finding the online version of that. Well, how do you do it? Again, instead of throwing recommendation systems at people and just, you know, showing them a whole bunch of products where I actually know what I want, just show me the thing that I want, really. Maybe what we can do is actually observe, again, customers' behavior to identify risks. And what I mean by that is possibility of an individual not exactly getting what they need in a session, and being able to identify the drivers behind that. What was it about that particular session that I'm there, I'm putting stuff in my basket, for example, or in my cart, but then I end up abandoning it, right?
Well, there's also, right, there's not only the risk of cart abandonment, but there's also the risk of return, which can be, well, is much more expensive. How do you help retailers think about the risk of return?
We actually worked on a project very recently during COVID, and the name of the game was exactly that. Can we actually predict who is going to return what item before they even purchased it? The short answer is yes, you can actually do that. The longer answer is not only you can do that, but that's almost not the important piece. The important piece is the to what end. What are you going to do then with that information? some interventions, right? If I know somebody's going to return an item, I'm going to think, well, how can I help them to maybe find a better product that they are not going to return? Or if there are other reasons behind return. Here it is. I'm guilty of that myself. I'm buying shoes online and, there's free shipping threshold. And you're going to put one more item in your basket to meet the free shipping threshold just simply because. Well, maybe it is about removing the free shipping threshold or reducing the free shipping threshold, right? Maybe it is potentially giving discounts, but then what type of discounts would be appropriate? Let's not think about blanket, hey, I'm just going to give everybody 10% discount and make it a final sale. That's a possible solution, but is that actually going to save you money? We have to go and measure and calculate that, right? So can we think about return and possible solutions for it? Absolutely. Super important problems, can really help with supply chain management, with customer experience, on and on, right? But on the other hand, you really also need to think carefully about what are you going to do with that information? And what are the systems that is going to enable you for that?
Well, and it's really interesting, right? When we consider the sustainability impact of returns, this is a topic for retailers, has continued to build in importance in 20, and we see it at the top of the list for 21, and so we feel that this idea of if you want to call it kind of intelligent intervention, whether it's at the point of sale or kind of along the customer journey, right? I'm sure you're seeing it as well. It's becoming even more important.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I have a lot of conversations that people, one way or the other, are asking about how do we make better decisions? How do we intervene more intelligently? So I really like this phrasing of intelligent interventions. And really the way I think about it is, and this is why I go back again to simplifying things. The goal is not to build model after model after model. The goal is to detect signals based on people's behavior, and based on those signals, make better decisions. That really is the goal.
Well, and also I really liked what you said earlier about this idea of not showing a customer an item that's out of stock, because if you're in the physical world, and so I think this idea of how do we read the online world and helping retail, that's top of mind for so many in 21. It's a significant opportunity as you're assisting everyone in kind of building these models and helping them create a more, if you will, robust experience, but also one that's yields greater results. And then as we think about
I don't know if it is your internet that is breaking or it's my internet. So I heard bits and pieces of what you were talking about, but I wasn't sure if I got the question you were going to ask me.
Yeah, I think around as we look at the kind of this idea that you kind of discussed earlier around the kind of offline experience where the customer wouldn't be presented with an item to purchase, but where online they are presented. How are retailers kind of rethinking these models as they move into 21?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I hear a lot of conversations around thinking about online storefronts, whether it is your native app that you are selling through different channels. I know in China, for example, WeChat, I mean, it is such a dramatically different experience because right there, you're purchasing something and at the same time, you're getting confirmation from your social network, whether you actually did a purchase or, whatever it is. So they're just like a whole different level. So a lot of conversations around, can we actually enhance customer experience? Is our mobile applications, our native apps, or our mobile experiences actually working? Because a lot of things really happening on our cell phones, right? So I think those are really important questions, and there are truly ways of enhancing that experience, organizations that do it well, and a lot of room for improvement, right? The other important piece is about capturing the data. As we are designing these systems, I think it is really important to think about how we are capturing that data and how we are going to think about using that data, marrying it with other sources of data. So before, the problem was just connecting your e-commerce website to now your POS systems, your transaction data, etc. So now you have all of these different systems. So it's really good to think in advance about how we can actually design these systems robust enough, but also flexible enough that we can marry the data rather quickly. And if we are building models to either recommend different things, help us make decisions better, how again the pipelines and the infrastructure are going to scale. That to me is a piece that as much as we talk about it, we don't necessarily do a good job about that. So just a lot of us are very focused on what is the solution to this particular problem that is in front of us. But the immediate question beside that is, how can that scale? So it's very important to not just think about, hey, I just want to solve this problem this minute. We have to really think about how that sits within a broader system and how all of that can come and speak, the data from different sources come and speak to each other, right?
That is truly the holy grail. I mean, this seems very simple, but I think is the crux of the issue. For retailers considering AI, how might they get started?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. As simple as we are trying, although I'm using the word simple enough, and I'm really advocating for it genuinely to just not think about making things more complicated than they are necessary. At the same time, there's a lot of prerequisites. The data systems need to be in place. We have to be able to think about what is the necessary source of data. So there are complexities. What is the good news in here is that in order to solve most of these problems, you don't need to boil the ocean right off the bat. You can really start with something we talk about this quite often, minimum viable data. What is your minimum viable data that is going to help you build your minimum viable models with an eye toward scaling them up? So it's about being agile, but let's not really overuse the word agile either, because it is about a scale at the end of the day. If agile is not going to help us to get to scale, what's the point of that, right? So where would we start? I think thinking about these intelligent interventions, some of the point problems and point solutions can also really scale up and be, reused for a lot of different use cases. The recommendation systems, for example, that we are talking about, that really can be helpful for signal generation. So there is a lot of really interesting dynamic things that we can do that at the same time help us address immediate problems, which we're dealing, or immediate things that we are concerned about right now, but also later. One last thing that I would add to that, especially right now, we are entering the holiday seasons. There is going to be a lot of activities, a lot of e-commerce activities. There is going to be a very real opportunity to capture data to be used for January 2021. So again, get this sense a lot of like, are we really behind? There's a lot of panic around increased e-commerce activity, which basically equates to increased return, and how we are going to deal with that, and can we actually work around it? Well, you can really capture a lot of data that can tell you what your customers are really looking for. And even if there is return, again, there's data in that as well. So I would say, let's step away from the panic of it. Let's really look at the opportunity in front of us. Huge amount of increased activity online. So let's try to learn from that.
I actually think you bring up a critical point there, which is we've never seen in many industries, and you know, with theory and practice, right? Both financial services and retail, with planning moving very late in a year for, you know, kind of so many reasons. And so I think that this point you kind of bring up, where there is panic right now, but I think that, you know, having this opportunity to capture the data and then analyze it. I mean, even if you're planning for 21 in 21, you're probably making better decisions, you know, as long as you have the model to do it, than in any other year, don't you think?
Yeah, no, I can't agree more with that. It's funny because last year this time, when I would talk with different retailers, especially as I was talking with them about their e-commerce activities and being able to capture that data more effectively, I would usually talk with them about, hey, you don't really have the data. We have to first capture the data, and garbage in, garbage out, right? Like everybody knows that. So now, and that's why part of me is actually quite excited, as difficult as it is for a lot of retailers to go through this. And really, I'm not trying to minimize the difficulty that everybody's facing right now. But with that also comes opportunity. We have an opportunity to capture a lot of data and use that data as a foundation in order to build a whole bunch of different models and decision-making systems more effectively.
Great. So I'm going to ask one more question, Rogayeh, and then it's up to you, the audience.
Sure.
So, Rogayeh, to enhance the customer journey, what interventions can retailers make using AI? I think that's really the holy grail, right?
Yeah, no, totally. Well, really the answer to that question starts from, well, let's first try to understand customers' journey online, right? Online and offline, but again, we are very much entering this online universe much faster than before. So if we actually understand that and everything, customers are telling us exactly what they want, how they want it, what are the things. There's a lot of competition, so let's not forget that, because beside every native app for whatever store, there's going to be another native app of a different company. And I mean, the funny example I use is Uber and Lyft. Whoever has Uber app, they have Lyft app sitting right beside it. So that's very much the same world when it comes to online as well. So being able to understand what is it that the customers want is absolutely key to designing the interventions. Usually making life simple, removing the barriers. These are some of the basic things. Can AI help with any one of those scenarios? Absolutely, it can. We can actually, if I know and capturing a lot of information from a lot of different users and a lot of different activities that has been happening, you can definitely try to identify the intent that a particular customer has, map that intent to the risk that is associated to that session or whatever it is that you're after. Try to understand the drivers based on that, design the interventions. So in every step of this process, AI can very much help.
Great. All right. So one of the first questions is, how do malls work with retailers in this new technology-enabled environment?
How do malls?
Yes.
Well, it really, I mean, that's a brilliant question. A lot of malls, I mean, it really depends in terms of like the advances. I remember working with a few retailers, especially a few years ago, and we were talking about having different beacons to really understand what are different things that the customers are like within a store, right? Are actually like looking at where they're spending more time in the store, right? So depending on malls and the kind of data and information that they capture, it's a tricky one, because I think on one hand, malls can have a lot of information in terms of where customers end up spending a lot of time and a lot of, I mean, the brand or the stores that are that much more popular, but turning that into an online experience, which is going to be a necessary part, that's going to be a question mark.
Right, and thank you. And then another question, is it better to use AI to find the right consumers for an offering, or to cluster consumers and then create relevant offers for them?
So the answer to that question really depends on to what end. So if we actually are trying to create a very personalized experience, and for some reason we have good evidence that that personalized experience can actually impact the KPIs that we are after, it can really enhance, that personalized experience can actually really enhance either purchase or the customer loyalty, or again, all of these different things that we care about. Sure, you can definitely use AI to do that, and you can do it very effectively. I mean, with the return use case, for example, we at an individual level, at an item level in the basket, we knew exactly what item within the basket for which individual is going to be returned. So you can have a very detailed, particular intervention in that case, right? So that is a to what end, that I would say, yeah, let's make it actually more personalized, because you can really create a big impact, and you can save millions of dollars, frankly, right? But then when it comes to, let's say, marketing offerings, there is almost this belief that if I go extremely personalized, I'm going to get a better return. There isn't that much evidence for that, actually. So because a lot of individuals, we are similar, me and my friends are similar. So the odds are, if you show me something that you've shown my friend, it's also still going to be interesting for me. So you really don't have to spend too much resources to make it extremely personalized. So I would say it's definitely use case dependent. There are use cases that personalization would truly create returns and ROI from AI. And there are other use cases that you won't see that much ROI out of personalization.
And then another question is, when can retailers, and this is actually a question we get asked quite a bit, is how do they think about, right, a time frame on their investment in terms of ROI, and how should they think about the percentage, or what is kind of a reasonable kind of outcome in terms of their investment as it relates to kind of an investment in AI?
Oh, that's such an important question. And I think it was last week that the MIT Sloan, the department management department, they released their survey. Out of 3,000 organizations that have invested in AI, only 10% of them saw an actual tangible ROI. And there was a definition for what they mean actually by tangible, and it was per revenue for client, and the portion of that, right? But the more important piece is, like, why does that happen? Why so low, right? The simple fact of it is we think about point solutions too much, and we go more complicated again. We think about making things complicated. We think if an algorithm is too sophisticated, or whatever, we are going to get a better ROI out of that. Not necessarily. The ROI usually comes from the interaction of humans with the algorithms. If you have systems that really enables your end user to benefit from the insights and signals that was generated out of your algorithms, you're going to see ROI. That's really why, even when we work with our clients, from week one, to their surprise, I'm like, who's going to use it? How is this going to be used? How is this going to be embedded? Let's really collect requirements for how we are going to benefit from this and design that. And I help them we really all have to understand that truly is the most important piece to AI. If we don't enable the end user to actually use the insights that comes from it, frankly, who cares? That you have a very sophisticated model sitting in a backend.
Well, I guess, and if you think about that, who ultimately in an organization ends up being the end user, and also along those lines, who ends up being the champion usually for theory and practice?
It really depends. It depends on whether we are after growth type use cases and strategy, if you're supporting growth or if you're supporting cost savings. And in all honesty, there's a lot of interaction, and there's a lot of relationship between these two sides as well. The odds are the same kind of thinking and models and solutions that can help you save costs. They can actually enhance experience, which indirectly is going to contribute to better ROI and better return for the organization as well, right? So it definitely is just not one-sided. But inside organizations, we work very directly with a business, actually most often. We work very directly with chief product officers, chief marketing officers. We actually even work with the sales and revenue generation, just teams that are responsible for that side as well. That said, we partner extremely closely with chief data officers and chief technology officers in order to actually create these solutions and take it to the next level.
Great. We have two more great questions, and apologize to the audience for not getting to all of your questions. This question is from Ken. How can AI help with more predictive offers? For example, identify items I might like, even if I haven't bought the item in the past.
Yes, the short answer, AI definitely can help. And actually AI is built, the algorithms are literally built in order to answer questions exactly like that. The way and the reason AI can help with this is because the algorithms are powerful in capturing patterns. So even if I haven't bought something, the odds are Deborah and I are pretty similar, and she has purchased something. So the algorithms from data would pick up the patterns of, like, Rogayeh and Deborah bought 5 different items previously that was similar. Deborah has bought these 3 other things, then maybe Rogayeh might be interested, right? So that's how it's really about pattern recognition, but on steroids, and being able to comb through billions and billions of rows of data and millions of customers to capture these insights. And Deborah, I know there's going to be a lot more questions, so totally please feel free to find me on LinkedIn or come to our website and just bombard us with questions. I love this. So
great. All right, this is a question, and I'll leave it with a great comment. Can you talk more about how a retailer can get going with AI? Should I build this capability in-house, or should I find a vendor to drive this?
It really depends on the current capabilities in-house. And also how quickly you want to accelerate. Finding resources that are really good at not only creating the AI algorithms, but also understanding the connection of that to how they can solve real business problems. That's really a big challenge for a lot of organizations. So it's not difficult to find PhDs that build these algorithms, right? It's about finding people that can actually understand the context and be able to design the solutions appropriate for it. Organizations that we have worked with so far, what we end up doing is that we usually help them develop and enhance their own internal capabilities. And frankly, that's really big for us, to be able to help our clients and our partners to just build those capabilities in-house. There is no shortage of use cases, and there is no shortage of work to be done. So being able to join forces definitely accelerates the process. So I would say it really depends on the organization's readiness. A lot of organizations, they do focus on having the data ready first. So years and years of data engineering. Really, you don't have to do it that way. It is possible to do things in parallel. Build systems that are robust in terms of your data, but also they are use case ready and AI ready. Unfortunately, what I have seen, organizations that have spent a lot of time on having their data ready, they haven't necessarily quite thought about, is it actually going to be use case ready and AI ready as well, or predictive modeling ready? And there are different requirements. So there's more nuance to it. There are more technicalities that is just beyond hiring the right people. And I think, yeah, there's definitely possibility of accelerating these efforts.
So I want to leave it with something that came in on the Q&A from Olga. Thank you. This reminds me of a shoe store associate bringing me extra pairs of shoes I never asked for, which I think is a great way to close this. But Rogayeh,
Yeah.
I want to say something is, I was at a really interesting dinner at NRF this past year, and it was with about 50 CIOs. And I had done a presentation around, kind of what we were seeing on a kind of global, right, kind of technology as it related to kind of AI in certain sectors. And I asked the audience, right, who had an AI strategy? About 5 hands out of 50 went up. And then who was doing that in-house? 1 hand went up out of 50, and they had acquired the talent. And so, right, if we all think about that, there's a huge opportunity, right, as we're all marching into 21, to think about, AI in our organizations, and, kind of working with a company like Theory+Practice with Rogayeh, and just assessing, right, what our, kind of initiatives are. And it's all about simplicity. I love that, right, because it's always so overwhelming. And I think that it's just about getting started and keeping it simple. So Rogayeh, thank you for joining us today. I feel like we're just getting started every time.
I know.
And really enjoyed it. And sorry for any of the technical difficulties. And everyone have a great day and a great week. And we look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.